In today's magazine flip through, we are going to be flipping through 882 and a half amazing answers to your questions about the Titanic. This is by Hugh Brewster and Lori Coulter. Such questions as, why was it called Unsinkable? Did anyone predict the disaster? Why weren't there enough lifeboats? Was there a real Jack Dawson? What happened to the dogs on board? Why are there 882 and a half answers? See inside. Why are there 882 and a half answers in this book? Because the Titanic was 882 and a half feet long. Big boat. This book is from 1998, so they probably have more information now. Here's a picture of the Titanic going down on its side, half in the water, half out. Trying to show you without the glare. How long did it take the Titanic to sink? At approximately 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, roughly 2 hours and 40 minutes later, the Titanic plunged to the bottom of the ocean. But what happened in those 160 minutes over 86 years ago has fascinated the world ever since. And as of this year, it is 109 years ago. And it actually happened, I guess, the day before I'm filming this, actually. Kind of like an anniversary edition. Birth of a Dream. Why was the Titanic so big? At the beginning of this century, or I guess, last century, the only way to cross the ocean was by ship. Two British shipping companies, Cunard and White Star, competed fiercely for passengers. In 1907, Cunard completed the Lusitania and the Mauretania, luxurious ships that would cross the ocean in a record 5 days. What could the White Star Line do to top that? They decided to build 3 ships that would be the largest the world had ever seen. One of these would be the Titanic. Here's a picture of the boat going all the way across the pages. Whose idea was it to build the Titanic? It was this guy, J. Bruce Ismay, who is the director of the White Star Line, and this guy, Lord Purry, who is the chairman of Harland and Wolff Shipbuilders. Who owned the Titanic? It was owned by wealthy American financier J.P. Morgan's Trust, International Mercantile Marine. Just how big was the Titanic? It was as long as 4 city blocks, as wide as a 4-lane highway. has 9 decks, makes it as tall as an 11-story building. How much did it weigh? It weighed over 53,000 tons. How fast could it go? Its top speed was 24 knots, which is the same, or about the same, as 28 miles per hour. Was the Titanic the biggest ship ever built? Although the Titanic was the same length and width of its sister ship, the Olympic, it was slightly heavier, which made it the world's largest in 1912. Why did they name it the Titanic? The Titans in Greek mythology were a legendary race of giants, so the word Titanic meant something huge. Is it true that someone predicted the Titanic disaster? Apparently there was a similar situation written about in a novel called Futility by Morgan Robertson, published in 1898, and 14 years later the Titanic disaster would make this story come true. Building the giant. Where did they build the Titanic? In Belfast, Ireland. When did they start building the Titanic? Work began on the Titanic on March 31st, 1909. Who built the Titanic? Irish shipyard workers in Belfast. Over 15,000 people worked at Harland and Wolff. They began work at 7:50 a.m. and finished at 5:30 p.m. 5 days a week, plus a half day on Saturdays. They had a 10-minute mid-morning break and a half hour for lunch. They were given 2 days off at Christmas, 2 days at Easter, and a week of holidays in July, all without pay. How much did the shipyard workers earn? They earned £2 a week. And the average wage at the time was £1 to £2 a week. A picture of the shipyard in Belfast. What was the Titanic made of? The Titanic's hull was made of overlapping steel plates, 1 inch thick, fastened by over 3 million rivets. How much did the Titanic cost to build? $7.5 million. Well, in 1912. Who designed the Titanic? Thomas Andrews was head of the Harland and Wolff design department and oversaw the creation of the ship's plans. Why was it built to be unsinkable? The hull was built with a double bottom. As a safety feature, it was divided into 16 watertight compartments. The ship could stay afloat with any 2 of the middle compartments or 4 of the first compartments flooded. Since it was thought that even the worst collision would damage no more than 2 compartments, the Titanic was considered practically unsinkable. When was the Titanic launched? May 31st, 1911. Was it ready to sail? No, the Titanic was just an empty hull at this stage. How many people watched the launch? More than 100,000 people crowded into the shipyard and stood along the banks of the river Lagan to watch the giant ship being moved into the water. And if you had a ticket, you could go and watch it. Fitting out. What does fitting out a ship mean? Everything that is needed to make a ship ready for its first voyage is part of its fitting out, from adding the top decks and funnels to making sure the kitchens have enough pots and pans. How long did it take to fit out the Titanic? 10 months. What did they install first? The 29 boilers, the huge reciprocating engines, and the turbine. Or turbine. I think it's turbine. These are a picture of the boilers, which are blurry. How many lifeboats were originally planned? 64 lifeboats, but they reduced the number to 32 and finally to 16 because that was all the regulations required and because they wanted to make room for more deck space. 4 lifeboats with collapsible canvas sides were added to bring the total to 20. How much coal did the Titanic use? It carried 5,892 tons of coal. And at a cruising speed of 21 to 22 knots, it used 620 to 640 tons a day. How could there be electricity on a ship? To run all the Titanic's lights, machinery, and heating systems, there was a generating plant powered by steam from the boilers. How many portholes and windows were there? About 2,000. Were there telephones on board? The Titanic had a 50-phone switchboard. The ship's crew could talk to one another on telephones located in the wheelhouse, forecastle, crow's neck, engine room, poop deck, chief engineer's cabin, engine room, stokeholds, and kitchen areas. Some of the first-class staterooms also had telephones. None of the phones could be used to talk to anyone on land. Getting ready. Did they test drive the Titanic? Just like a new car, a ship has to be tested before it can carry passengers and cargo. On April 2nd, 1912, tugs pulled the Titanic out to sea and her engines were fired up. The crew practiced port, left, and starboard, right turns, stopping, turning a full circle, and running at different speeds. In all, her sea trials took less than a day. What are some examples of the Titanic's general cargo? Ostrich plumes, 12 cases, shelled walnuts, 300 cases, sardines, 25 cases, straw hats, 4 cases, champagne, 63 cases, tennis balls, 3 cases, cheese, 1 case, velvet, 1 case, hair nets, 4 packages, potatoes, 1,196 bags, mercury, 2 barrels, olive oil, 25 cases, rough oak beams, grandfather clocks, 2 cases. And they also had 76 cases of dragon's blood, which is a sap from a type of palm tree found in the Canary Islands. It was used to color wood varnish and women's makeup. And there was also a car on board, a new Renault. And the most exotic object in the Titanic's cargo is the something I can't pronounce, the Ruba Yayat of Omar Khayyam, a book of ancient sayings. It has a bunch of precious stones set on the book. There's a picture of the cargo there. There's a car there. And also a bunch of beds there. The Titanic's crew. This is the captain. His name is Captain Smith. This was to be Captain Smith's last voyage. He was retiring at the end of the Titanic's maiden voyage. After 38 years of service, 25 as a captain. What was his salary? He earned £1,250 a year, plus the bonus of £200 if none of the ship's sea captains had an accident. The officers of the Titanic, I guess I can name them. Chief Officer Henry Wilde, First Officer William Murdoch, Second Officer Charles Light-Toller, the junior officers, Third Officer Herbert Pittman, Fourth Officer Joseph Boxhall, Fifth Officer Harold Lowe, Sixth Officer James Moody. What were their duties? The officers managed the day-to-day activities of navigating the ship during their time on duty. They also had their own individual tasks to attend to: update the ship log, update the ship's charts, measure air and water temperatures every day. How many crew members were on the Titanic? 892 were listed on the Titanic's crew list. What were their duties? Assist the officers in day-to-day running of the ship, shovel the coal into the boilers, helped run the engines and machines, set the tables, served food, cleared tables in the dining room, served morning and afternoon tea, made beds, tidied staterooms, cleaned the lounges and other public rooms, and prepared meals. How much were the crew paid? The firemen had £72 per year, and the stewardesses had £42 per year. Some of the crew members were teenagers. They were only 14 or 15 years old, and they worked as bellboys, carrying luggage, page boys running errands and delivering telegrams, or as lift boys running the elevators. How many women worked on the Titanic? 23, including 18 stewardesses, 2 cashiers, a masseuse, a Turkish bath attendant, and a matron who acted as a chaperone for single women in 3rd class. All but 3 were saved. Sailing day. Who was the first passenger to come on board? The ship's builder, Thomas Andrews. And who else boarded early? J. Bruce Ismay, the White Star managing director. How much did it cost to buy a ticket on the Titanic? Ticket prices vary depending on the size and location of room chosen. I think this is the ticket right here. A single first-class ticket averaged £86. The 2 deluxe parlor suites cost £660. Second-class tickets averaged £13. A third-class berth cost an average of £7. And of course, these are 1912 prices. What number wasn't used as a room number? 13. Could passengers bring their dogs with them? Yes, at least 9 dogs were passengers on the Titanic. What kinds of dogs were they? Pomeranian, a Pekingese, a Chow Chow, an Airedale Terrier, French Bulldog. Some of them stayed with their owners, but others were locked up in the kennels. There were also 2 prize French roosters and 2 hens. In the kennels, I guess. Or, well, near the kennels. Did any rich passengers bring their servants with them? Yes, 31 personal maids and valets came on the voyage. Where did the servants stay? Most of the servants were given cabins beside or across from their employers so they would be available to assist them during the voyage. Did anyone miss the boat? 7 stokers had gone ashore to visit one of the many pubs across from the dockyards. They stayed too long, and by the time the rush past the Titanic, the gangway was being pulled up, and new men had been hired to take their places. How many passengers were in each of the classes? 329 first-class passengers, 285 second-class passengers, 710 third-class passengers, for a total of 1,324 passengers. How many children were in each class? First class, there was 5. Second class, 22, and third class, 76. Who were the richest children on board? Probably 11-year-old Billy Carter and his sister Lucille, who was 14. They were returning home to Philadelphia after a year in England, where their father had spent most of his time fox hunting while they were in boarding school. What was their room like? This is their room here. If you can see that, I don't know. They had a luxurious suite on B deck with rooms nearby for their maid and valet. And the car belonged to their father there. The one we were talking about, the Renault. Which family was the largest on board? The Sage family, who were immigrating from Peterborough, England to Jacksonville, Florida, included parents John and Annie and 9 children between the ages of 4 and 20. What was their third-class cabin like? It would have been like this. Much different. There's 2 little bunk beds. It says, what did children like best about sleeping in third class? The bunk beds. Who was the youngest passenger? 2-month-old Melvina Dean, who was traveling in third class with her parents, and 1-year-old brother Bertram. Did every room have its own washroom? No. Although the Titanic's toilet facilities were advanced for 1912, even some of the first-class passengers shared a washroom. Like this one. Where could you get a drink of water? The wash basin taps in the rooms were connected to huge freshwater tanks in the bottom of the ship. How many bathtubs were in third class? Only 2 for more than 700 passengers. This here is an example of a parlor suite. And this is a first class stateroom. And this is a second class stateroom. What was a typical first class stateroom like? A single person room had a bed, large sofa, wardrobe, desk dressing table, and wash basin. A bad omen. The Titanic nearly collided with another ship when leaving Southampton. They were only 4 feet apart when they almost collided. What did the passengers think about the near collision? Some people remarked that it was a bad omen for the start of a maiden voyage. Really? This is fun. What was served for first lunch on the Titanic? First class diners were served garden soup, fillets of fish, beefsteak and kidney pie, roast surrey capon, chicken, grilled mutton chops, mashed, fried, and baked potatoes. Here's an example of a menu for first class. Rice pudding, apples, Manhattan, and pastries. In addition, they could choose from a buffet that featured fresh lobsters, roast beef, bologna, sausage, galantine of chicken, and a selection of cheeses, as well as such delicacies as potted shrimps, soused herrings, sardines, and corned ox tongue. In the third class, passengers were served rice soup, corned beef and cabbage, boiled potatoes, cabin biscuits and bread, and peaches and rice. And where was the Titanic headed? Its first stop was Cherbourg, France, 67 miles across the English Channel. How long did it take the Titanic to get to Cherbourg? More than 4 hours. When did it arrive? At 6:30 p.m., just as the sun was beginning to set. How many passengers was the Titanic picking up in Cherbourg? 142 first class, 30 second class, and 102 third class. Were any of the new passengers rich or famous? Yes, some of the richest and best known of the Titanic's passengers boarded in Cherbourg. Among them were John Jacob Astor, one of the world's richest men, estimated to be worth $150 million. Benjamin Guggenheim, whose fortune came from his family's mining and smelting interests. Margaret Tobin Brown. She would be the one who would become known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. Charlotte Cardezza and her 36-year-old son Thomas. Sir Cosmo and Lady Duff Gordon. Lady Duff Gordon was one of the most fashionable dress designers of her day. Did any passengers get off at Cherbourg? Yes, 15 first-class passengers and 9 second-class passengers disembarked. Next stop, Queenstown, Ireland. The Titanic picked up new passengers and let off those who were only going as far as Ireland. It also loaded and unloaded bags of mail. They got there at 11:30 a.m. on April 11th, and they left at 1:40 p.m. on the same day. Exploring the Ship of Dreams. What room was the grandest of all on the Titanic? The first class lounge, was decorated to look like a room from the Palace of Versailles. It had elaborately carved paneling and a marble fireplace on which stood a classical statue called the Artemis of Versailles. Here's the grand staircase. What room was the most fantastic? The cooling room where passengers relaxed after a Turkish steam bath. It was decorated to look like a room in a sultan's palace with richly colored tiles, gilded beams, and bronze lights. That's right here. Is it true that some rooms were reserved for men only? Yeah, there are 3 smoking rooms. And the room for women only would be the reading and writing room. Was there a ballroom? No. Could you shop on board? Not really. There were 2 barber shops sold postcards, small gifts, and souvenirs, such as White Star pennants and paperweights. Could you get your laundry done? No. What if you got sick? There was a hospital on D deck and 2 doctors on board. Could the classes mix? No. Why was it called the poop deck? A poop deck is the highest outdoor deck on a ship's stern. This room can be traced to the Latin word pupus, which means the end section of a ship. Why was third class called steerage? This term referred to the cheapest possible ticket. Historically, the steerage was the stern area of a ship near the rudder or steering equipment. It was least expensive price to stay on board because it was the most uncomfortable. What did the passengers do for fun? They could ride the mechanical horse or camel in the gymnasium, or use a stationary bicycle or rowing machine. Wow, that does sound like fun, doesn't it? They could watch the passenger's dog being walked, play deck quoits, shuffleboard or other games, spinning tops, and attend a concert in the first class lounge in the evenings. That's for the first class. Second class, skipped and played games like horse racing, read books, and the third class children played games on the poop deck. What did adults do for fun? The first class ones went swimming in the pool for a cost of 25 cents per ticket, played squash in the court on G deck. That cost 50 cents. Exercised in the gymnasium, relaxed in the Turkish bath, played cards, read, and socialized in the lounge or the smoking room, lay in deck chairs covered in White Star blankets while stewards brought them hot drinks. Chairs and blankets could be rented for the voyage at a cost of $1 each. Met friends before meals in the reception room. Sent messages to friends from the middle of the ocean through the wireless room. Took photographs and developed them in the dark room on A deck. Second class passengers read, played cards, or socialized, chess, dominoes, walked and used deck chairs on the decks reserved for second class. And the third class met friends in the third class lounge known as the general room, or smoked and played cards in the smoke room. Instruments danced on deck or in the general room. Walked and sat on benches on the poop deck, which was for third class use. Was there gambling? Yes. Was there an orchestra on board? Yes. There's 8 musicians. Is it true that Titanic had its own newspaper? Yes. A daily newspaper called the Atlantic Daily Bulletin was prepared aboard ship. In addition to news articles and advertisements, it contained a daily menu, the latest stock prices, horse racing results, and society gossip. What did the passengers enjoy on the Titanic the most? The meals. Here's more about the meals. Eating on board. When were the passengers served their meals? Breakfast was 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. Lunch was 1 to 2:30 p.m. Dinner was 6 to 7:30 p.m. This here is a picture of the first class dining saloon. How much food did the Titanic carry? I don't think I'm going to read all the amount. I'll just read the food. Fresh meat, fresh fish, bacon and ham, fresh eggs, sausages, sweet breads, which are calves' organs, coffee, tea, sugar, flour, grapes, oranges, lemons, fresh milk, fresh cream, fresh butter, grapefruit, lettuce, tomatoes, fresh asparagus, fresh green peas, onions, potatoes, jams and marmalades, and ice cream. Did the orchestra play during meals? Yes. Could you get breakfast in bed? Not really. How many chefs and chef assistants worked in the Titanic's 5 kitchens? 60. From soup cooks and roast cooks to pastry cooks and vegetable cooks. There was a kosher cook too to prepare the meals for the Jewish passengers. Cook prepared over 6,000 meals each day. Here's a picture of the cooks and their assistants. Who washed the dishes? 36 glassmen, plate washers, and scullery men. Where did they throw the garbage? Food scraps were tossed overboard and eaten by seabirds and fish. Here's some more about the Titanic's passengers. What countries did the passengers come from? Most of them came from Great Britain and the United States, but they're also from Canada, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Syria, and a whole bunch of other ones such as Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Croatia, France, Greece, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Netherlands, Peru, Portugal, South Africa, Switzerland, Thailand, Turkey, and Uruguay. How many Canadians were there? Approximately 50, of whom only 15 were saved. The richest Canadian was Harry Molson of the beer brewing family and president of Molson's Bank in Montreal. Were there any movie stars? Yes, one, Dorothy Gibson, a 20-year-old silent screen actress. She would later star in Saved from the Titanic, a movie made 1 month after the disaster. Her costume was the dress she wore on the night of the sinking. Were there passengers on their honeymoons? 13 couples traveling on the Titanic were on their honeymoons, 8 in first class. Was it true there's a murderer on the ship? Yes. One of the Titanic stokers had served time in prison for murdering his wife. Warnings of disaster. When did the Titanic first receive a warning of ice ahead? On Friday, April 12th. Several eastbound ships sent messages congratulating the Titanic on its maiden voyage. They also mentioned that ice was in the sea lanes. This looks like a telegram type thing. What did Captain Smith do when warned of the ice ahead? He steered farther south. A peaceful Sunday. Not for long. And they got more iceberg warnings on April 14th, Sunday. And I got more iceberg warnings in the afternoon as well. And I think I'm going to leave it there and leave you in suspense, although we know what happens. And I will see you next time.